Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and my guest this week is Josette Mezera. Josette, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Anthony?
I'm good, especially since I think I pronounced your last name correctly.
You did.
All right.
Perfect.
The pressure is off. Well, thank you for coaching me through that before we hit record. So how are things going at the Y? You've been there for 4 months now. Do I have that right?
Right in between 3 and 4
3 and 4. Okay,
Yeah.
So how are things going?
It's been really good. I've really been enjoying the variety of projects I've been doing there. I've met a lot of really awesome people. We have so many different things going on that, I mean, every day I feel like I'm meeting a new Y staff member or getting to do a new type of project. So it's been really good.
All right, great. Well, we will dive into that in more detail in just a few minutes. But first, I want to learn a little bit about your career path. And what I typically ask our guests is to talk about what you were initially thinking of career-wise and whether you continued perfectly down that path and that's where you landed today, or if you took some twists and turns along the way. What was that like for you?
Definitely some twists and turns.
Yeah, you are not unusual among our guests. That's more common than not. So tell me what you're originally thinking. Did you grow up in Northeast Indiana?
I did. Yep.
Okay.
I grew up in Leo, which
yeah.
Fort Wayne adjacent.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So what were some of the original thoughts about career and where did you go from there?
Yeah, so initially I thought I wanted to go into music therapy. I was always an art and music kid, always loved all the creative fields, but I had decided to try pursuing music therapy because it really interested me in the aspect of being able to help people while still being in kind of a creative field was really what drew me to that. So I went to IPFW for that. It was one of the only colleges around here that offered that as a program. So I got 3.5 years in when I decided to change my major.
Oh, wow. Okay. And if LinkedIn is correct, you pivoted to graphic design?
Yes.
Do I have that right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So did you end up with a double major or did you scrap the music therapy altogether?
I ended up with a minor and then a major in graphic design.
All right. Okay. So why did you pick graphic design? Was it because it was sort of arts adjacent or what would spark that interest?
I feel like that was kind of the first thing that drew me that way. I was like, well, if I don't want to do music, which it was more of a regional thing, music therapy isn't as prevalent in this area, and I wanted to stay close to my family.
Sure.
So that was kind of what first led me to explore something different.
Got it.
So for graphic design, that seemed like maybe not a safer route at first than maybe like teaching or fine arts.
Yeah.
But I have always been pretty tech savvy. So I was like, well, arts, tech, there's a lot of different options in graphic design. And so I met with John Motes at PFW and he was really awesome and made it feel like it was going to be okay if I changed my major this late in the game. And he helped me get all of my classes crammed into 2 years for a 4-year program.
So were you able to complete college in 4 years even though you changed majors that late in the game, or did you have to stay after class, so to speak?
It ended up being 5 years.
All right. Well, that's not
too bad.
I am a proud member of the 6.5-year club of college, and some of that was I was a complete failure right out of the gate, and some of that was changing majors. So you did comparatively very well to finish in 5 years.
It's important you end up in a spot you love.
Yeah, that's right. An extra year in the grand scheme of things doesn't make all that much of a difference.
Yeah.
So you end up with a graphic design degree, minor in music therapy. What does work look like right after you're done with school? What do you start doing?
Yeah, so in 2019, which was kind of my last year of classes, well, in the spring, I did an internship with the World Baseball Academy, which for those of you who don't know, it's a nonprofit here in town focusing on youth development and leadership. So I interned with them in 2019, and then they were actually able to create a new position called Visual Communications Director, which was very needed for the nonprofit. They were really small, they were growing a lot, and they really needed someone to help kind of champion that area for them. So I interviewed for that and ended up getting selected, which was awesome. So that was a really unique opportunity for someone pretty freshly out of college to really be able to take the reins on really the whole organization.
Yep.
And I did it all. I was the email person,
So
photography
they handed you the
person.
keys to the brand.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's where you and I met, because was it through Weil and I Leadership
Yes.
Institute? All right. I was hoping I had that right.
Yep.
All right. So, how long are you at WBA, and where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I was at WBA from my internship in 2019, and then I got hired on at the end of 2019. And then I was with them until June of this year,
Okay.
which is where I transitioned over to the Y.
All right. So you're at WBA for the entire pandemic. Not that we're technically done, but we're hopefully close to done.
Yes.
So you meet your coworkers and then you go off and you're working remote, and it's a whole different world.
Yep. It was welcome to the event industry. Oh, also, there's a pandemic.
Yeah, there's not going to be any events, at least not in the real world. Okay, so let's talk about the YMCA. I think most people who would ever listen to this know what the Y is, but I want to hear your perspective on it, because the Y is very different in very different parts of the world. I knew I grew up where the Y was more of a social services organization where I grew up. And then I came here and I was like, these are really nice gym facilities. And it changed, what I knew. And as you and I were discussing before we hit record, served on the Y board for a while and got a better understanding. But from your perspective, what is the Y? What's it all about?
So for me, the Y is really a place that strives to bring everyone together and make sure everyone has a place they belong. So you mentioned more of a social services area. That I think is one aspect that really speaks to me about working at the Y is that there's really a program for everyone where you can belong. They have adaptive and inclusive programming. They have support groups for a wide variety of things. And they do a lot more than just being a gym and having your kids' soccer league and stuff. Like there's so much more. Just last week, or I think it was last week, sometime this month. Just this month, there was the Welcoming Week event, and the Y has been hosting a few different events for that, welcoming people that are new to the country and making sure that they have the resources they need. So that was in partnership with Amani Services and the city of Fort Wayne. But
yeah. And tell us a little bit about your role at the Y. What exactly do you do, and what does the team you work with look like?
Yeah, so I am the marketing and communication specialist. So a lot of what I do is email marketing, promo items, really anything that the branch is needing. So we have 8 membership branches, and then we also have the Youth Service Bureau, Camp Potawatomi, Child Care Services, and then we also are affiliated with Great Kids Make Great Communities. So they're actually a part of the Y. So any of those branches I just listed can email me, be like, hey, Josette, I need help with this, or I need an email sent out. Can you help me with that? I need a event brochure. I need a sign. And then I can help them with that and kind of fill those needs as they come up. So that's really fulfilling for me personally, because I grew up volunteering. I just love to help people. That's just kind of an innate thing that I feel driven to do. So being able to really help these individual people as I get to know them is kind of an extra bonus for me. Because I'm like, oh, this person who I really like over at this branch needs help with something. I want to jump on that and be able to help them out.
So how do you balance that with the challenge of prioritization? Because, again, I know enough about the Y to be dangerous, but you've got these really great facilities that have their own kind of culture. And, if I'm Amos, I want to make sure that my branch or branches get all the attention. So I'm probably going to ask Josette to make my stuff a top priority. But if I'm at Jorgensen or Parkview Y, I'm probably doing the same thing. How do you deal with that? How do you manage priorities?
That is a very good question. A lot of it has to do with just timing. So some people's events are going to be sooner than others. It's really just keeping track of dates and needs and making sure that I'm super organized on my end so that I know, if this person needs an email sent out for their event and this person needs an email sent out for their event, okay, what's sooner? And then I'll work on that first because maybe that's a hotter item for this moment. And then fundraising events are usually a pretty top priority as well, because we have a hard deadline for that. And
Sure.
we're always, having to order things, make sure stuff is in stock. So that's usually a higher priority item too.
All right. And it's a complex and it's a big organization with a lot of moving parts. People listening to this may not know just how big the Greater Fort Wayne Y is, but it's all the YMCA's in Fort Wayne proper, and then a couple outliers, correct, that are outside Allen County. So you're having to speak to a lot of different audiences.
Yeah.
How do you manage the responsibility of being the person with the keys to the brand for a big brand where it's well established and there's national resources that you want to be consistent with, but how do you give the local entities their own flavor? How do you do that?
So a lot of that has been just getting to know
Yeah.
each branch.
Yeah, and I'm asking you questions that are probably unfair to ask you 4 months in, but
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's stuff that I've been working on
Sure.
consistently throughout those 4 months.
yeah.
And a lot of it has been guided by my supervisor, Amanda. Shout out to Amanda. She has been an absolute godsend as far as getting me adjusted, teaching me kind of the ins and outs of the brand and how we use certain aspects of it. So as far as managing each branch and kind of their personality, a lot of it has been looking at their past choices on things, like, okay, what did they want to do for this? Checking in with them on just seeing what, like, a couple different options.
Yeah.
Okay, do you like this better? Do you like this better? Making sure that I have the language they want to use up front, and then kind of building off of that. A lot of branches will create their own flyers that they use in branch, and then they'll send me that. And I can kind of base other items off that if needed.
Okay. So you mentioned Amanda. What's Amanda's last name?
Amanda McConnell.
All right, Amanda McConnell. Who else is on the team? How big is the marketing team at the Y?
Yeah, so as far as marketing at the Metro office, which for those who don't know, it's the business office where we have the financial group there, the CEO, CFO work there. So at Metro, the marketing team is just me and Amanda that are specifically on marketing.
Okay.
And then we have Nicole Hansen, who's the director of mission advancement, and she works really closely with Amanda and I as well.
So, and Nicole is marketing and fundraising, correct? She has a pretty big job. Is that still true?
Yeah, she has a pretty wide role of things.
Yeah.
So she's working with our mission partners to kind of keep them connected and keep them represented, as well as working with Amanda and I over in marketing.
Okay, so it's a small team with a lot to do.
Small but mighty.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the things that you're focused on now that are high priority, the biggest projects you're working on? Maybe the stuff that's most exciting, maybe the stuff that's most challenging, maybe a combination of those things.
Yeah, so for me, the things that get me pretty excited are the fundraising events. So those are really rewarding on my end because it's a lot of small details, planning things that only a designer would really think about, like signs and what will people, like how will people understand certain things? How do I need to organize this or lay this out for a event attendee to really understand the best. So seeing that kind of all come together at the event is always really rewarding because you can see people enjoying your work and enjoying the event and know that you helped contribute to its success. So in a couple weeks, we have our Sip and Support event, which is benefiting our Youth Service Bureau. So that's been a really fun one to kind of start digging into and learning about how we do different things. Now, this will be my first one at this event, but I think it'll be a really rewarding event for sure, seeing like all our signage, and the team has done a really good job. They have a really great committee. So seeing them work together is really awesome. And then in, I think, maybe 3 weeks is the 33rd Annual Conference on Youth, which is run by Great Kids Make Great Communities. And that's been one that I've been able to help them out with some promo products on, with some email marketing. We had a postcard that went out. And then we're working on their conference brochure right now. So those are some really fun items that I've gotten to do that are kind of although I love working in the Y brand, it is fun to have
Sure.
some projects that
Oh, yeah.
are a different brand as well, and they have their own branding over there.
A little bit of variety doesn't hurt at all. Yeah. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about the more digital side of things. Do you get involved at all in social media content creation, website edits, any of that stuff on your plate? I mean, you've got enough to do if the answer is no, but is that something you focus on as well?
So that is all Amanda.
Aha,
So
okay.
she is the digital marketing director. Okay. She
Okay.
is the digital marketing director.
Got it.
So she tackles a lot of the social media, website stuff.
Okay.
And then I tackle more of the email, physical products, things like that.
Got it. But you're probably working closely to make sure that the message is consistent and the look and feel is consistent.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of your career, you've worked, it might be coincidence, but you've worked for a couple nonprofit organizations. Is that intentional? Is it a happy accident? Is something you plan to continue? Or are you thinking, I don't know yet, I'll see where the world takes me? How important is it to you to work for organizations like WBA and the Y?
Yeah. So for me, I think it is a pretty crucial element to me being happy in my career, because that was always something that I kind of saw myself doing, but I didn't really know how. Like growing up, I volunteered at the zoo and the animal shelter and volunteered for walks and events. So that's always kind of been something I do for fun. So it was like, well, if I can work that into my career, that's definitely an option that I want to take. And then it kind of just worked out that I was at World Baseball Academy when I was, and that I was able to intern and then get that position with them. And then ending up at the Y, very similar feelings there, where I was like, if I can be somewhere where I know I'm doing good, then that will take me a lot farther than maybe more money or something would, because that's an important value for me, that I can feel good about doing my work.
Do you still have the capacity to volunteer, or are you just focused on the full-time job?
Yeah, so I am actually on the volunteer board for Young Leaders of Northeast Indiana.
Aha,
I'm their vice president of communications.
All right, okay. An organization that I have the pleasure of being, I'm definitely not a young leader, but I am an old man who shows up and talks to the Leadership Institute once a year about communication stuff. So that's another organization that I have some familiarity with. All right, well, let's pivot to some more quick hit questions.
Yeah.
We've talked about your career path. What have you learned in that? You're still a little young in your career, but you've had a couple jobs, you've done a few things. What's something you've learned during your career that you think is critical for people to know, a piece of career advice, if you will?
Yeah, so I think for working in marketing and being kind of someone new in that field, something that I think would be really important for people to remember and keep in mind as they're kind of looking for jobs is that they are maybe a lot more qualified than they think they are.
Aha.
I feel like for me, soft skills have been really important. Things like communication, organization, attention to detail. Those are all things that you gain those skills through college and through taking a ton of courses at once. Like, that's challenging. So you already have a lot of the skills that you need to be successful, and you don't be as intimidated as you might feel looking at job listings, because you probably have what you need.
Yeah, I love that advice. When I'm talking to college students, I tell them, there's a lot to be said for experience, and this isn't to diminish the importance of experience, but being in school is experience. Studying a topic is experience.
Yes.
And, I say to students, don't necessarily refer to yourself as an aspiring marketer. You're a marketer. You're learning things. Sometimes what you're learning in college is you're getting more depth in topics than some people who are more generalists get on those topics as they're working. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And, that it's good to have a little humility and to go into it knowing you have a lot to learn. But also, I really like the advice of having some confidence that you know some stuff and it can be worthwhile for an organization to benefit from that. Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
So second quick hit question has to do with the why. What do you think is something that is underappreciated about the Y that more people should know about, maybe a myth or misconception that you want to clear up? Either of those is fine. What's the one thing you want to amplify when it comes to the Y?
So we kind of touched on this earlier, but the fact that the Y is more than just a gym.
Yeah.
Like the Y is out here and has been helping kids for, decades, since like
Yeah.
1844.
Yeah.
It's been around and it's been doing good
Yeah.
since its inception. And it has a really rich history that is definitely worth looking into
Yeah.
if you're maybe unfamiliar with it. They have tons of great programs that are doing so much good, giving kids a positive space to maybe play a sport in kind of a toxic sports culture, as well as like, gosh, the Youth Service Bureau is doing so many good things.
Yeah.
They're, changing kids' lives, and
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about them.
Yeah.
And then a fun fact, the YMCA invented basketball.
Really?
So,
And
and volleyball.
Was it James Naismith in a facility in Springfield, Massachusetts?
I believe it.
Okay? Well, that's so. Listeners, go to Wikipedia, and if it doesn't say YMCA, change the entry in Wikipedia to say YMCA. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I agree with that. I think that's really good perspective because there's times when you need a gym, you need a place to work out, end of story. You want a place that has good equipment. You get in the door, you get out the door, that's all it is. But the through line with the Y in my life has been, sort of the community hub it has been for different phases of my life. When my son was young, it was a place where I could bring him for karate class. And those of you who know my son, yes, the most pacifist, docile kid you'll ever meet was once in karate. So I could do that and get a workout. We could take advantage of Parents' Night Out, which is a great thing, by the way. It's a place to put your kid when you want to go out with your significant other, and the kid gets to spend time with other kids, and you get what is, a great babysitting service, and the kids get to have fun too. That was a great resource, the ability to connect with other adults, but also have the kids connect. It's just a great thing. It's not something you're going to get from something that's just a gym. So it's something I've come back to time and again for the reasons you mentioned, for sure. And some of the stuff that's maybe less well known, like Youth Services Bureau, is a really important facet too.
Yeah, it's absolutely a huge community asset that I think sometimes gets overlooked in all the good it's doing.
Yeah. All right. Last quick hit question. What is a tool trick? No, not trip. Trick. I knew I was going to trip myself up on that. A tool, trick, hack, something you use in your work as a marketer that you think other people should know about.
I would say the website Airtable.
Airtable. Okay. I've heard of this.
Yes.
But it's been a long day. Tell me more about what Airtable is.
It is kind of similar to Trello.
Yeah.
But just kind of a different layout, a few different options. I feel like it's super flexible and I can do whatever I want on it to keep me organized.
Okay.
Like
it's project management then?
Yeah.
For the most part? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I feel like that really keeps me on track when I have all these different things that I'm doing. You can color coordinate things and have all your resources for your project in kind of one spot. So
okay. All right. Airtable. We use Trello here at Asher, and we're pretty invested in Trello, mainly because we've been using it for a while and we don't like change like most people. But
my
Airtable,
husband is a Trello guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of a house divided situation.
Well, I think most of them are similar. It's kind of more what are you used to and what are the bells and whistles that you need versus the ones you don't need. But,
yeah.
All right. Well, that's really good advice. And as fast as you work, as many different projects as you're working on at one time, you need something to keep yourself organized.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that Trello has saved me time and again, and it is really great. It's a game changer for folks who don't use a project management tool. It's still the same amount of communication, but it gets you out of email quite a bit and gets things more centralized in a place where everything, if it's only as good as the information you put in, but it's a reliable place to go to look at a history of a project or a topic without having to go through your email inbox.
Yeah, I like being able to also see all of my different projects and priorities
Yep.
visually, just so that I know I'm not forgetting something. It's out of my brain and into my Airtable, and I can just see it and know that I'm going to get all that stuff done.
Yeah.
Because it's there.
Well, I think that's really important. There's a book that I really love that I've referenced on the podcast before. It's by a guy named David Allen. It's called Getting Things Done. And as someone who has always been ADHD, I didn't figure out until late in life that the more frameworks I had, the more flexible I could be. And one of the things that David Allen's book taught me is that the quote is, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And if you try to keep stuff in your mind, it doesn't let in as much good stuff where you can be creative. And just that stress reduction of, I know I'm not going to work on it right now, but I know that it's covered later. I'm taking care of future me with this system, I think is super important.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of similar to the concept of like the mental load.
Yeah.
And how you've got all these other things going on in your brain. Oh, is my kid going to make it to swim lessons?
Correct.
Or whatnot? And the more you can get out, then the more room you'll have to worry about everything else.
For sure. Or not worry about everything
Or not
else.
worry about everything else, because you've got it covered.
Yeah. Now, I would assume as a graphic designer, do you work in a Mac universe or a PC universe?
PC universe.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, is that painful for you as a designer, or does it work out okay?
When I started in graphic design school,
Yeah.
I already had a PC from when I was in music. Because that was what I had.
All right.
So
Okay.
I have usually worked in a PC, which is, I know, a hot take. But
Wow. Yeah.
that was what they had. That was what was available. So I was happy to continue in my PC world.
Well, I'm actually glad to hear you say that, because most of the designers I know would find that to be a heresy, but I'm glad to hear you're more flexible. And I say that with all due respect to the designers of Asher Agency who use Macs and who are very much attached to their Macs. But both can work.
Yes, I have used both. I am familiar with both. It just is what has been available. So that's what I've been using and enjoying, and maybe I will try a Mac sometime. Someone can convince me.
But people of the world, it is okay to be a designer and work on a PC. That's what we've learned here today.
Yes.
All right.
Use what you have available.
There we go. All right. Well, Josette, thank you for that bit of wisdom and for everything you shared with us here today. It's been a pleasure learning more about your story and hearing about your work at the Y.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And thanks to everybody who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.